Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also welcome our buddy Jesse from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. He's digitally recording us for high-definition viewing on their website, as well as on Solaris HD Channel 3 or Charter Channel 985. And the reason he's here, it's time for a monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Carl, and good morning to our listeners.
Okay, let's talk about last night. Some history made at the start of the Common Council meeting. A new firefighter was sworn in, and some others were. There was also other administration of oaths and the like, but there was a bit of history. Our first female firefighter.
Yeah, it was. It was a neat occasion where Ashlyn Wagner was sworn in to be a firefighter with the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department. It's our first female firefighter, as you just mentioned. So we wish her the best, and know that I understand on her first day on the job there was some activity that she was involved with down in Saratoga. There was an accident down there that now that we're providing service to the Saratoga market or to the community there that that she was involved with that. And there was also some promotions, as you just mentioned. So congratulate those folks as well.
How's that going to work out with her in the firehouse?
Yeah, well, the day's they've been preparing for the day that eventually there would be. So there have been some accommodations made to obviously have separate restrooms and other accommodations to ensure that her workplace is just as safe and promotes a good work environment as all of our male firefighters as well.
Where is she from? Is she a native?
She's a local, which is really cool. That she's gotten her education and come back to the community. Actually, she's kind of worked in the area, so I wouldn't say she really left the community, but she's young and she's ambitious, and I could see that when I met her last night.
Well, congratulations and welcome to the fire department. We wanted to, before we get into some other business, I wanted to find, can we close the book on the debate on this temporary residential sale of agricultural products?
Well, yes, I think. I was quite surprised the council actually reversed its decision. So it was the second reading of an ordinance that would allow the sale of agricultural products. And agricultural products could be anything that could be sold now at a residence. And, we had some spirited debate over the last couple of months on the item. I tend to disagree with the council's decision, and I'm looking at options in order to kind of safeguard, because residents have come to me saying, I don't want the sale of agricultural products happening next door, at both sides of me across the street, because it creates a business in a residential neighborhood. And while there may be really good, well-intentioned operators and proprietors that want to bring their products into the city to sell, we have farmers markets, we have commercial districts, we allow farm stands, we allow so many other alternatives to allowing you to set up a Christmas tree stand sale in your front yard, or pumpkin sale, or strawberry sale, you name it. So effectively last night the council did decide, and we're to be the only community in our area to allow this. Stevens Point, Marshfield, Wausau, none of these communities allow this for good reason. These are residential neighborhoods. There isn't adequate parking. It's bad enough when people have garage sales, maybe more often than what some neighbors like, that we've heard in community and across the community, some have perpetual garage sales kind of year round. It just creates a nuisance for neighboring property owners. So, we believe that there are adequate opportunities for folks to sell their agricultural products. The council reversed its decision last night from the previous meeting to allow this, and so I'm quite surprised actually in that.
Okay. What was the vote?
5-3. 5-3 to allow. So
now will it have to come back for another?
No. As I understand it, it's actually takes effect whenever the ordinance is published.
Okay. So, I would say if those residents who start complaining should call those 5 aldermen.
That's right, because they certainly could reconsider it. It's not that anything is a done deal necessarily. If the council or the city decides it just really hasn't worked out. I mean, the reality is the ordinance change technically allows all 6,000 residential parcels to set up a commercial sales stand to sell their agricultural products. Now, is that realistic? Probably not. But the reality is they certainly could.
Okay, moving on to another topic. The city is seeking the single-family subdivision developer. You're seeking proposals for that.
That's right. Yep, still on 25th Avenue to the south here. We're still accepting proposals through the end of the month. So interested builders and developers want to make sure those folks take a look at the city's website to look at the request for proposals so they could respond to that and get their proposals into the city.
Okay. And the deadline for that is?
I believe it was the 31st of March.
Yes, it is. Yeah, the deadline is March 31st.
Depending on the number of applicants or folks expressed to us, they're working on an application, maybe it isn't quite complete, those various reasons, we certainly can entertain those comments. The council would have to reopen it, I believe, but there has been a deadline established to the 31st.
Release from your office says you are calling on the governor to designate city investment zones.
Yeah, in the tax law that was passed at the end of the year, there was a provision created to allow designation of opportunity zones. And essentially what that is, it's a modern version of the New Markets tax credit program in a different form. What it would do is folks that have high capital gains liabilities, tax liabilities, could actually get those liabilities reduced, so their taxes, tax liability reduced by investing in certain zones designated by the governors around the country. And Wisconsin, I believe there's 400 or so eligible census tracts around the state, and the governor can only nominate a maximum of 25% of those eligible. So we don't know what the governor's going to do. Today is actually the deadline for the governor to request an extension to the U.S. Treasury for designation. So I issued a press release earlier this week calling on the governor to designate 2 census tracts in Wisconsin Rapids. The qualifying criteria generally is income and poverty level. And in this city, we've got 2 eligible tracts, one of which is across West Grand Avenue from us here. It really goes from the river on the east, and then West Grand to the north, and so it's really the southwest corner of the city, which has the highest amount of poverty amongst the census tracts in the city. And so the unique program that this would, or unique opportunity for us, is it obviously brings capital that may be on the sidelines, that people want to offset their tax liability to the federal government by investing in low-income communities. The other census tract actually kind of starts at the Triangle property. Across Jackson Street, runs up the river, and actually through Buren to the north of the city, northeast of the city.
Okay. What are you hearing? What you think you're going to get either of these?
It's been quiet. We have no actually indication, because the governor appointed a working group to vet these, and I've been reading some correspondence out of the Milwaukee Journal and some other publications calling on areas of Milwaukee which have high certain areas where there are high amount of poverty. But I think it's a unique opportunity for the governor to really make a statement to rural communities that urban areas naturally have a capital-rich environment, right, where they've got lenders and large institutions making loans and investing in these communities. We don't have that here. We've got a lot of community banks which try to make an investment or make a mark, but until we can get anything that's really of critical mass. So I think this designation would help the WISE efforts, the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club's effort to attract capital and investment in that project, because it would serve a community need. It would qualify. So it also, the other opportunity from the opportunity zones really is to leverage public investment that the city or other public entities might be already making. So take, for example, our ongoing investment in streets. So this year we're going to be doing High Street between 17th Avenue on the west, and we're going to go take that project east. So essentially we would leverage that investment as a match for private investment. So
right.
We could invest in other projects in the area that we're talking about.
Is this something that our state legislative delegation could help you out with?
Yeah,
Representative Krug and Senator Teston?
I did tip them off on Monday Friday when I sent the letter actually to the governor and to the State Housing Economic Development Authority. So they're aware of it. I talked to Representative Krug yesterday, and he was going to do some checking around to see what information he could get for us to our chances of getting designated as a site.
Okay. If you're just joining us on the Morning Magazine, welcome. It's our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink, and you can call in your questions at 715-424-2600. the Aqua Center or the Aqua Park or whatever we
call it,
Aquatic Center.
Pool, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about that and the fun. And there was some spirited debate about that in terms of spending or what. So give us an update.
Yeah, in order for us to get construction documents to build the thing, we need to finish with design. And we began design about a year ago with our consultants. And the point that came up last night was there has to be a modification to the original contract, for a couple of reasons. One of which, we decided to actually design a full master plan versus just the designs for the Aquatic Center. And essentially what that'll do is ensure that we've got provisions in place for replacing the tennis courts, which are at their end of their life from a pavement standard. It will ensure that when we start building the thing that we don't realize that we should have designed something differently next door to it. So ultimately, we believe it'll save us money in the long run because the designs will be completed at today's dollars versus doing designs later. So we'll have a full master plan set of designs for the development at Witter. And the discussion last night was the consultant came to us with a $195,000 proposal, and we said, no, we have some reason to negotiate this down. So we were successful in negotiating $25,000 off of their original request. So a portion of that $175,000 goes to design, and then a major portion of it actually goes to construction oversight. So whenever you construct a $10 or $12 million project, you've got somebody, or you've got an entity overseeing the construction of that project. And we knew that we don't have the technical capacity or really the time at the city to oversee the construction of that project whenever it gets underway. So the point last night is there was some debate about scope creep and that, and scope creep was a small portion of it, yes, because we decided that we wanted to design some of the other park amenities, one of which was wintertime skating. I think the community would be best served if we consolidated our wintertime skating, our hockey, lowboard hockey, and our regular leisure skating at that site because there would be a winter warming shelter right there, as well as all the parking necessary and all the other park amenities. So I think it's going to save the city operational dollars long term because we're going to have one place to maintain, not have to go over to Robinson Park and then come over to Witter to maintain the skating ponds. So that was the one cost driver in there is we had them fully vet out the design and make sure that it was feasible. One, to have the bathhouse at the Aquatic Center, the changing facility and the entrance area to be 4-season, so we can have our warming area in there, as well as a community room that can be reserved for special events. And so we really took that feedback from the community that said, we want this thing to be a year-round facility. We don't want it to just serve us 80 days in the summer, right, or 3 months in the summertime. And I think it was money well spent, and ultimately the community be pretty proud of the project. Now, the need arises for us to still raise the $4 million to put shovels in the ground.
Okay, where are we in that process?
So we've got requests into a number of donors in the community. We have not heard back since our last show on any of those, so I have nothing to report as far as an update on our capital outreach.
Okay, 715-424-2600 is the number to call to speak with the mayor. And with that, we'll take our first caller this morning. Good morning, you're on the Morning Magazine.
Yeah, I'm moved up here about 5 years ago. One thing I have a hard time dealing with is finding addresses on people's houses. You can't even see them. I know in Marathon County they're redoing all their addresses up there. You can drive for 3 or 4 blocks and not even recognize an address.
House number?
I think I don't know if it's the mayor or the sheriff or somebody needs to have something going where we can identify your house from the road, it's not hidden underneath a bush or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think we have an ordinance requiring that all in the city anyway, if you're talking about city homes, that all houses have to be numbered, and if they're not numbered, that report can be made to the city. It can be made, I would think, to the fire department, but primarily to our city inspector, our code enforcement officer, who entertains any sort of code violation, and that would be a code violation, or even our building inspectors. So you could make that report to any number of people if there's a certain block or a certain area of town. You could
it's
also
the whole city. I've been driving around and the numbers might be on the house, but there might be only 2 inches, and you can't see that from the road.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the size requirement is, but I'll certainly look at
mine. You can see mine. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and I can say,
well, you can see mine. I have 6-inch numbers on my house. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Well, it's a fire safety concern, right? So if we have to respond to an emergency, having those fire numbers are really important.
A fire you can see, but if somebody has a heart attack in your house, how are you going to see that?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right, that was the point. The emergency personnel need to see the address.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's a good reminder for our listeners, too.
3 blocks. Wait a minute. What 100 block am I in? I can't even tell that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, definitely let us know if you said it's all across the city, but let us know those.
If you got a smartphone, take a picture and send it
over to us.
And send it
I don't have a smartphone. Yeah, I'm not.
No problem. Make a note of the block
and make a note of the block and send it and let them and take a look at it.
To whom should I call again?
I would call the city building inspector or code enforcement.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Good enough. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I remember when there was the update of that ordinance, and it was pointed out to everybody, make sure that your address can be seen from the road.
We certainly can do outreach, proactive outreach, but I think it's incumbent upon all city employees too, as they're driving through the neighborhoods, if they see a block where they're not able to identify from a, like you say, a public safety or a response time.
And with our elderly population, some of them have visual acuity problems, and so it can be tough to see some of these smaller addresses.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So we need to. Going back to the Aquatic Center, are we still looking at the same timetable?
So our update on the schedule would be we're not going to be able to break ground at spring. We had said kind of a soft deadline of March 1st if we were going to break ground, let the project for bidding, and then break ground yet early summer. So we're in kind of a scenario B, which essentially is, depending on fundraising over the course of the summer months and early fall, there is a potential we could still break ground in 2018. It's likely that substantial completion on the project wouldn't happen until midsummer next year for an opener, maybe late June or early July. So there is a slim chance that there could be a swimming pool facility open next summer. I'm an optimistic person, but we also have to raise the $4 million to make that happen.
And you got the fundraising and capital going for the Y and the Boys and Girls Club at the same time. Is that kind of... Does one hurt the other?
I'm not sure if it hurts one another. I think donors are motivated differently. The swimming pool facility at Witter is a public facility, right? It's owned by the residents of the community. The YMCA Boys and Girls Club, while it's utilized by members of the organization, it's not a public facility. So I think there's a different dynamic there, and I think they definitely have their uniqueness and their strengths, and so I think donors are motivated differently. I made a capital contribution to the YMCA Boys and Girls Club because I believe in their mission, I believe in the service that they're doing and providing to the community, but it's very different. I'll make a contribution to the Aquatic Center because I believe that our community, no matter their membership or their ability to join something, that they'd have a safe place to swim and recreate and learn how to swim too.
Okay, that leads into what role does the city have in getting finalizing preparations for the start of work on the new home of the YN Boys and Girls Club? So
they submitted actually last week their site plan, which included updated landscaping plans as well as the building footprint and the layout of the parking lots and such. So that is under staff review right now, and so things are moving forward well with that. But they still have their fundraising goal. They're raising $6 million, is my understanding, and they've raised at least $2.5 million of that. So they're on their way. Okay. 715-424-2600, the number to call if you want to talk with Mayor Vruwink. Triangle Project. Sure. Last time we were here, you were talking about the developer is in the process of putting together the actual design, what they're going to bring to the Common Council for its consideration for the public, and we're talking about a public reveal, as it were. That's right. So we haven't scheduled any public reveal because one of which is property acquisition. The developer is considering its strategy related to the acquisition of the neighboring properties over there that the city does not own. So they're analyzing how they're going to approach those property owners and ultimately secure acquisition necessary to get underground parking on the entire site. So there's that piece of it that's kind of behind the scenes, and then ultimately the design work, which we hope to have in the coming weeks.
Okay. Are we still? Is there still a possibility of something beginning this year?
I think so, and I think the reason why I believe that's a possibility is because we've done the site prep. We've done the demolition on the majority of the site. We've done cleanup. We've done the environmental investigations. We all know that those things have checked out. So the good news is that pre-work is done. And I think when people criticize the city for buying buildings and tearing them down, well, number one, they have to understand that that's economic development. That's how you invest and promote business growth and business investment. But at the same time, you accelerate the process. Take the certified site at the Rapids East Commerce Center. We've got some folks that have requested copies of that certified site documentation because we've already done the analysis. We've already understood what the capacity with gas lines are, what the electrical grid can support, what our water capacity is, and what our wastewater capacity is. So the point is, the more pre-work you can do on the front end, the more time you save and the cost you save to the developer to make a decision to acquire a site or make a major investment.
So you're saying that this is kind of what's needed, because if you don't do this and another community does, a developer might go, say, to the community that did do this work?
Time is money, and if you waste a developer's time, they're not going to stick around. They will not stick around in this community, or they're going to go somewhere else, as you just said.
Okay. Before we go to our first break, let's go to another caller. And you're on the Morning Magazine. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen, and I'm so glad to have you on the show, Mayor, and thank you, Carl, for mediating this. I know that you're very optimistic and very optimistic, Mayor, but I think that we also need to be, as taxpayers and people in City Hall, realistic, and that may bring some pessimism into some of the projects, because we have how many, 60 to 70 some million in potential outgrowth and potential needs of the area. And I'm wondering if maybe we should look at prioritizing our strengths. Maybe the pool should be left to the people that know pools. I think this delay is excellent due to the fact that now we can say how many kids are actually attending. Where are they from? What is their average attendance? How many days was it open with good weather? All of these things can be answered because now we have the town of Rome. We have other splash pads and other things going on. That being said, I'll listen off the air if you have a comment, and maybe you don't. But the second thing is something that hit the wires was a party house that happened in a for rent by owner. And I'm wondering if any of us in our neighborhoods are, so far we've been blessed. And I can say some very wonderful people. But with neighborhoods changing and not monitoring, the cars coming and going, will we need to have a ruling, or is this just not necessary at this time? And I'll listen off the air.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thanks for the call. I think in terms of priority, a couple of thoughts come to mind. First of which, the city, because of its, really was fortunate to have a conservative approach over many years in terms of spending. And I think we still maintain that. The challenge is the interest rate environment in which we live, with historic low interest rates. Projects over the course of 20 years cost a lot less than they will come a year and a half or 2 years from now. So there's a window of opportunity, and we're already inching away from that, or inching out of that from during the 5 years that I've been in office, when interest rates were well below 2%. It's hard to believe that we borrowed money at less than 2%. Now they're closer to 2.5%, 3%. And so I think when you talk about doubling your interest rate costs, your borrowing costs over the course of 20 years, there's a major savings that can happen to the city. So I appreciate the caller's question about prioritization. We also have to be realistic in the opportunity that if we wait to make investments in projects that have already been called for and been asked for the community, or have been wanted by the community for 15 years, it's going to cost us more to do it. And that's something that concerns me as a taxpayer, because I'd rather have the city pay less over the course of 20 years. And that's why the city pledged its $5 million and borrowed a good portion of that, over half of that already, because we want to take advantage of that low interest rate environment. Now, should the project not happen, or we decide to take it in a different direction at some point, even though we've invested in the design work, we could reallocate those borrowing proceeds, the money we've borrowed, for other infrastructure. So, look at it from that perspective, that we have to kind of hedge our bet and reserve borrowing, so that way we can take advantage of the expiration of some borrowing that we've done. The other thing I'll mention is I always get the Taxpayers Alliance report, which stacks and ranks municipalities and their spending on police and spending on general government and public works and all the categories. And then it also stacks the debt capacity, or how much debt every city has. What's always struck me is that our city has been at the bottom, not toward the bottom, at the bottom of cities in our size and in like comparables, and the amount of debt we have. And not that debt is a great thing, right? Of course, we've got to be very disciplined. But at the same time, it goes to show we haven't invested in certain things over our time. And I think the time has come and the time is passing if we don't take advantage of low interest rate environments.
And actually, it's been my observation of 30-some years covering this city that it seems like when we delay or whatever, and then it's forgotten. Stuff gets forgotten. Then a new group tries, and the swimming pool issue is a perfect example of that. Yeah. We've been talking about a new swimming pool, need for swimming pools, when we still had the 2 swimming pools.
Yeah. It was recently mentioned, right, during the campaign here. It's too bad the city didn't have a plan to replace its pool, and I agree. And we should have had a plan, but it was all these past efforts that didn't ultimately produce anything, which is really disappointing. And I think people get really disappointed, and some people get disengaged, and some people even move as a result. That if a community can't accomplish certain things in a period of time, people are going to find other places to live. And I think that reality for some of our residents is not really held by them. And I think the reality too, when I sit at a business, as I toured Mariani yesterday after they've done their big expansion out there, they're faced with a desperate work environment in the sense that they are not able to attract the amount of employees they need to operate their facility. And that's the same for Verso. It's the same for Domtar. I mean, they're stealing or poaching from each other because that's what they have to do. And it's reasons like community facilities such as an aquatic center, such as a very exciting downtown and riverfront, such as good housing, that convinces people to move to a community. And if we're not going to make investments in these things and we're going to say, you know what, let's wait. Let's wait for that unforeseen time, and we don't know when it is. Let's just wait. This community will continue to shrink. It's going to continue to decline. We're going to continue to have neighborhoods with really, really bad situations, and that's what concerns me as a leader, because I see these things every day. I see our competitors and other communities doing these things. And if this city decides to, you know what, we're going to tighten our belt and we're going to hope for another day and wait for a time that isn't really decided, this community is not going to attract the amount of young people and the amount of talented workers that this community needs to thrive. And
the other part of her, the last part of her, about the need for, I'm assuming, some ordinance involving party houses or what? Yeah, I think we had the social host ordinance passed, which essentially goes for underage drinking. That we can issue up to a $10,000 fine if there's adults hosting underage parties. And I'd like to know the caller's instance so we can decide if there is an ordinance that we can pass. If it's in rental housing or if it's in short-term rental housing and those sorts of things, we certainly have options for us or to us to enforce situations. And if it's an episodic thing, it's tough to pass an ordinance for something that's episodic because you always spend a lot of time debating it and you'll never have that episode again. So I think, I'd like to hear more about the details on that. With that, it's time for our first break. You're listening to The Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends on TV via Wisconsin Rapids Community Media.
Good morning and welcome back to The Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thanks again, Jerry, and welcome back, everybody, to today's show on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink is here for the entire hour, and we're taking your phone calls at 715-424-2600. Let's continue our talk about housing.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks like to point to Plover and the growth that Plover's had, whether it's in population or whether it's in commercial development. And I think it's really important for us to break it down, that if we don't attract new investment in housing, you will not see new investment in commercial. You're not going to see new investment in business ventures because there just isn't the new income and the new resident population to support it. Or basically rooftops. Commercial developers, national franchises and chains, their basic criteria is rooftops. And this city has not had new growth in housing over a long term. We've had a lot of growth in retirement housing, which is great because folks can stay here, spend their money here. They can be close to family if the family's still in the area. But because we've been so adverse to supporting new housing developments in the city, we've seen the explosion of growth in housing in Plover. And people can point to their reasons and their belief why that happened. But the reality is we've been so, we haven't prioritized the need in housing development. So that's why when we talk about 25th Avenue, if we can get new rooftops on this side of town, in certain investment levels, you will see new business development on the West Grand Corridor. It's a simple economic development story. And the same goes for other areas of town. And that's why, when people say, well, you need to fix the train situation. Nobody wants to live on the west side. Well, let me tell you, over half our residents live on the west side. So clearly people do want to live on the west side. And I think the same goes for new investments that Alderman Kellogg has talked about coming together with a program that we buy homes that are assessed maybe or homes that have burnt in a house fire, that we consider tearing them down, combining with the other lot next door, and then expecting a new home to be developed. And I think that's how you're going to attract incomes to this community. Where do people buy and build houses? They build them in the town of Grand Rapids or they build them in Plover. And this city has to understand, in order for us to reverse that trend, it takes action at the city council level and the city hall. It takes money at both those places. Things just don't happen magically. We've got housing developers that are coming to us with other proposals right now for other housing units, market rate housing units to the quantity of 40 or 60 units and 2 and 3 bedroom. And I think we're going to continue to see outside interested parties until we see a local community really say, you know what, I need to start reinvesting. And some are seeing that, oh my gosh, I need to flip these houses in order to attract a certain rent level, but also a different clientele. And I think that's the other dynamic of these neighborhoods is some of the homes are really, the assessed values are really low, and so they can't expect, a high rent amount. So between the development downtown or the developments that I'm referring to, the housing developer that's planning the senior housing in the Centralia Center parking lot got word last week they were successful in their pursuit of state tax credits. So that project will proceed, pending a site plan that meets our needs and doesn't consume too much of the parking lot and other things. So I think on housing, people don't like to talk about it. They like to think, why is the mayor always harping about housing? But the reality is, when I talk to my counterparts and the success they're having in attracting business and growing the income levels of their community necessary for new business development, it all starts with housing.
Okay. I guess the county is...
The county's entertaining, a sale of the property on 17th and Rosecrans, which was previously identified for the Justice Center. I haven't heard the county's decision on that, but our understanding is there's some interested developers in that property, and so I commend the county if they have sold it, and if they haven't sold it or have done something else with that decision, I sure hope they consider it for the benefit of the tax base that is necessary to continue to sustain our city services.
You're talking about things that maybe we need. At the Incourage meeting the other night, there was one of the things was that we need to be brought up to date on what's going on, that the council and the mayor and the business leaders all do this stuff all by themselves, and the city's not. Do we need to maybe do some education about simple economic development? This is your situation. This is how you get out of it.
Yeah, it'd be great if people would show up to it.
Yeah,
and
I know.
That's the challenge, is getting civic participation. We all know it's much easier to complain to a neighbor or to a friend than it is to show up to a meeting or email myself or give me a call or have a meeting with me. And I think that's just basic democracy and civic participation. It's not to the level that we've always liked to see it or hoped it would be. But, take our zoning code rewrite.
I was going to ask you about
in terms
that.
of a public outreach, we hosted our zoning code open house on Monday at the library in the afternoon, 3.5-hour open house. Wasn't a half an hour or an hour. It was a 3.5-hour open house. And we intentionally offered a very broad window because we knew we would get different demographics of folks showing up. If they're working, they can't get there at 3 o'clock. They can get there maybe at 5 or 6 or 6:30. And we were astounded based on the turnout for that open house. And I think it was because we marketed it well, but we also know that people are interested in zoning and possible changes to zoning. And so they were there mostly to hear what was happening. And I guess for our listeners, what it boils down to with our new zoning code is really new standards for new construction. That there isn't landscaping requirements for your residential properties or your home. That's up to you, of course. But in commercial settings, there may be new expectations related to landscaping plans, new expectations related to parking. That historically we've set minimum parking thresholds. Well, we have a lot of parking lots, and I think the reality is retail is changing, and so is the need for parking. And so our code contemplates or proposes that instead of a minimum amount of parking, we create a maximum amount of parking that based upon the use and the square footage of the development. So instead of the 80s approach was you need an expanse of parking for all your customers at peak times. Well, we're being more creative with that. And if you're on A Street, for example, we'll provide for parking agreements so you can actually share parking with neighboring businesses. Let's say if it's a business that's active during different day parts. I'll take the Dunkin' Donuts, for example, right? That development will have a strong morning and maybe even a late morning crowd. They're not going to be an evening or dinner place. Pizza Hut, for example, which is where the location is being proposed, Pizza Hut has got a big lunch and evening crowd. So those two developments could conceivably share parking. And so they don't need on their own property all this parking if there's a neighboring business that happens to be complementary. So I think it's that type of idea, and I'm oversimplifying it, but that's the idea that our new zoning code will be more flexible, will offer a new character and new standards for construction and development and how things look. And I think over the next 20, 30 years that code will be in existence. It's pretty exciting to see what future development may look like.
How will transportation be affected?
The zoning code really doesn't decide anything on transportation.
Okay.
Yeah, we do provide for requirements related to bike parking, though.
Okay, let's talk about that.
There's a trend in bicycle use in alternative modes of transportation, especially as we've put bike lanes in more places. I mean, East Grand Avenue's reconstruction next year will have bike lanes taking people up to 8th Street. So I think the reality is, as the city redevelops streets and creates more space and safe spaces for people to use alternative modes of transportation by foot or by bicycle, you're going to see the need for more bike parking at various businesses. And our previous code didn't require it. It was silent on bicycle parking.
Does the plan change our business zones at all? Or does it foresee a switch? And
in terms of future land use,
yeah.
Not so much. It corrected some things. There was some property that was designated as agricultural use, and I think in the city it's probably not the best use of property to have ag property.
Where was that?
There was some in the west side over here, northwest side.
Okay.
Actually, I'm not sure the property, the county we were talking about, I don't remember the zoning on that, but really we didn't create any major non-conforming. The one thing in mobile home parks that we took a look at was there really isn't any space for mobile home parks. We're not setting aside future land for mobile home parks, knowing that our preference would be single-family homes or multifamily apartments or multifamily developments, condos perhaps. So we're going to see, essentially an elimination or an extinction of mobile home parks as time goes on, of course, not overnight. So that's, I think, a better land use decision that the city is making through the zoning code rewrite.
Okay. We got to take another break and then be back with more here on The Morning Magazine. At AM 1320, welcome back to the Morning Magazine and our monthly discussion with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. It's spring, second day of spring. construction season, so it's right around the corner.
Yep.
What are we looking at in terms of major construction projects going on in the city that people need to be aware of?
We've got to finish the reconstruction on Washington Street. So there's sidewalks that have not been installed because of the timing of that project. We pushed too close to winter last year, so you couldn't pour concrete. It was too late. So we're going to be finishing up that project. That's one of the early projects on 26th Street or 29th Street. We're going to be doing a sanitary sewer project up there, a sewer project in general, and then First Street North, which was disrupted almost all last year, and some delays with DNR permits and such. We're going to be finishing up the recreational trail that will ultimately connect to Buren. So those are some of the finishing up the two projects, and then we're going to move over to the High Street reconstruction, which is over here. And the neat part about High, and I know it's been controversial to some that live there, but we're going to have sidewalks on that entire corridor. And as somebody that's walked kids to school over the years, to Meade School and to St. Paul's, kids need sidewalks to get to school safely. These kids are not being dropped off. They're not riding a bus. So I think it's going to be nice to have kids off the street and on sidewalks to get to school safely, as well as, folks that are walking the neighborhood on evenings and weekends. So High Street is another big project that starts over on 17th Avenue and heads east. Okay.
Your take on the community survey that was revealed last week. I'd be interested in your overall feeling after hearing what was presented.
Well, I think it validated some of what I feel and see, and that's generally we've moved along the continuum, so to speak, of optimism for the future of this community. I think back as a young person, and when the mill sold the first time, what shock that brought to our community, and then when layoffs happened as the demand for coated paper products went down. And I think we're recovering well from that. It's not quick. It's very slow, and it's frustrating because I think it impacts a lot of our policies that, as the caller brought up, around pessimism or just if you kind of tighten the belt too much, you're really pulling yourself out of the competition for other business operations and such. So I think that was something that I saw in that survey, and maybe it's a deep interpretation of it, but generally people are more optimistic. They're seeing things happen. They like to see things happen in greater speed and that. But I think even it shows that, to your point about education, that maybe folks who want to be more educated that should take it upon themselves, or that maybe even governing bodies like the city council or other school board, one of the school boards in our area, or one of the town boards or city councils in Nakusa, for example, that those boards should find ways to involve their residents in the process. And I think we've done that at the city now during my time, and I'm proud of the fact that we've got more residents participating and being involved in various advisory boards and youth advisory. But I think there's opportunity across the region because the community survey is, of course, reflective of the greater Wisconsin Rapids area. And I think that's something that as I read the survey results, I have to keep my mind in check. What is in my purview and sphere of influence? Right. Am I able to improve or make a change on behalf of? And I think when you think about hot button issues down in Saratoga with land use and zoning and obviously the proposed development there, some of those things are reflected in the overall community survey. And so I have to remind myself, this isn't just Wisconsin Rapids residents supplying their input.
Well, what's your response to those that say, well, this community is still hostile to new business? Or that we got to simplify regulations and this, we're turning down business. When you hear that,
I think we're overly critical of ourselves. Naturally, right? We'd like to think that our community should be doing better and that sort of thing. And I subscribe to that thought somewhat, but I don't think that's unique. When we've had debates at the Planning Commission, or when I think back to when Aspirus proposed their hospital in the community and how politically and how emotionally driven people were, I think I look at that moment and say, maybe we showed up to oppose that because we thought we had every reason to believe that the world was going to come to an end and the sky was going to fall if Aspirus built a hospital in the community. Maybe it would have. Fortunately, they decided to acquire Riverview Hospital, and I think they came to terms, both entities came to terms with that, and I think that's a case in point that sometimes we need to take a step back, pull ourselves and our own personal agendas and vendettas out, and think about the broader community. What is the need? Might this benefit a population of the community that I or someone else, my people in my circles may not benefit from, but others may. And I think that's where, I think about those moments in my time in office in 5.5 years that have been very political. Somebody decides they want to respond to a community need by putting in a rooming house for folks that are coming out of jail. And those meetings are always packed with the neighbors and saying why we can't have this in our community. It's not the right place. Not
in my neighborhood.
Right. I think it's the NIMBYism that is really the nemesis or the really goes to the throat of being hostile toward business. And I don't think our city council, and I'm biased, of course, but our city council has said yes to more business development in this community, I think, in the last number of years than in the last 30 years, for example. So if we're taking a long view on it, I think the city has moved a lot in the positive direction to being open to new business. Now, it's getting business to this community. And when businesses pull up, maybe the newspaper or media and read headlines and reporting about the community, or they speak to people when they're scouting in this community. I mean, a lot of times these folks are doing recon at the coffee shop, or they're doing recon and they're flying into the airport. That's the sort of attitudes, or maybe they're walking through the paper mill because they're looking at maybe a purchase of that enterprise at some point. Those are the types of reflections, and I think we need to continue to remind ourselves, if we've got a negative view or a pessimistic view, you got to check that and really say, is that really is it their personal view, or is it really representative of the overall community? So I think we have a long way to go to encourage and change attitudes, and I think that's where some of that's reflected in the community survey. And
I think maybe sometimes we need that old adage, if you can't say something good, zip it.
That's right. That's right. If it's not constructive, I'm fighting those every day, right? When I talk to businesses about moving to this community or growing here, and they say, well, what do you think about the attitude that I heard this morning? And I have to walk that back. As a community cheerleader, I have to sell them on the fact that isn't representative of the entire community. And that's a tough thing to do. I spend more energy trying to win over hearts and minds about why this place is a place of opportunity than I care to admit. And I think it's because a lot of times we're too hard on ourselves. We think about some of the anecdotal, well, that isn't going well, so therefore it's representative of the entire community.
Yeah, or I didn't get this project, ergo, this community is anti-business, right. Or I didn't make my money, or whatever.
Yep. A lot of it's in strategy, right? And taking a really serious look on how do you educate people? How do you inform people about the community need or the project maybe? And I'll admit there's been projects that have been proposed to the city that didn't go well. And I look back and as kind of a post-mortem analysis and say, well, they didn't take their time to educate and inform. And I think, I think back to 25 years ago, right, when projects were proposed in this community, or 15, and I hear stories, and I think, a lot of it was in the education and informing the public and the decision makers.
Anything that you wanted to make sure to get out before we wrap things up?
No, I think we've covered the gamut today, Carl, as we normally do, and thanks to the callers for the questions.
Okay. Again, now, I told this to your opponent when he was on Zerflu's show. Depending on whoever wins April 3rd, I would like to continue our discussions.
I sure hope we can.
Yeah, because this is important, and I've done it with I don't know how many different mayors, so I could maybe write my own history of Wisconsin Rapids via the history of the mayor's office.
You have the microphone here, yeah.
Yeah, so
it's a privilege. Thank you.
But again, we want to welcome to the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department firefighter Ashlyn Wagner, and there was badge pinning ceremony for the newly promoted fire department captain of operations Jason Joling, motor pump operator Mike Litzka, motor pump operator Derek Matakowski, and Captain Shift Commander Todd Eckes. And we congratulate them for their accomplishments.
Right, a bit of movement in the fire department, as well as the Police and Fire Commission will be beginning their search for a fire chief.
I was going to ask him about that.
Fire chief, and that process is underway. And I don't believe they've posted the position yet, but folks interested in applying for the fire chief position with the city, that process will begin here very soon.
Wrap things up. How's the upgrading of the website?
I just came from a meeting on that this morning. We're hoping to launch here in the next 45 days. the new website. It may take us 60, but I'm pushing them, setting a deadline of 45. Let's see if they can meet it.
Okay, and it's going to be one that's going to be more user-friendly, more...
Especially for mobile devices. So most of the world that is online is using some form of smartphone or tablet, and so this website will interface well with those devices too.
Okay.
It's long overdue, 15 years. I think in the coming, maybe not quite 15 on the old platform, maybe more like 10, but it's definitely outdated.
Okay. Well, like I said, sir, I thank you for your time these past 2 years, and we'll see what happens April 3rd. But either way, we'll have a show next month.
That's right, Carl. Thank you very much, and thanks to our listeners.
And with that, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and also on WFHR.com. And we also want to thank Jesse from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, who's been digitally recording this. Again, you can view it in high definition on their website, as well as on Solaris HD Channel 3 or Charter Cable Channel 985. And that's going to do it for the Morning Magazine.